Attention, passengers. This is your co-pilot speaking. Your pilot is black-minded, so you are not going blind and there is no power failure. You are merely experiencing the immense blackness of his proximity, and when you hear his voice, you and the cabin will get even darker than you are currently. We will be cruising at the speed equal to light because the one other thing that travels equally fast is darkness. Your loved ones awaiting your arrival may not recognize you at first sight. This is normal. Simply tell them about the pilot and they will understand. We will taxi to the runway now, so please buckle up and prepare for a high-speed departure. Thank you for choosing Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. We hope you keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Justice forever.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Send me and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me start by thanking you, CJ, for your compassionate message. And I mean that. I hear compassionate and I do appreciate that. May Allah reward you for that. I was unaware that you grew up without parents or grandparents and that it was so young on top of that. That isolation had to hurt. That loss had to hurt. And it also had to hurt a lot less than it would hurt some others because your grandparents and parents were going back to God. They didn't do any wrong. They just died. They didn't abandon you. And I've dealt with that sense of loss, of course, but not quite nearly as badly as you had to deal with it. But I've dealt with a sense of loss that did not involve abandonment, just death, or even being forcibly removed through the no fault of that person. I had a nightmare last night that my own dad was gone, and I was back in my hometown talking with my mom about the grief. And I woke up hoping that it was just a dream and that I would not find out he was gone. Alhamdulillah, so far there's been no bad news from back in my home state. But I was struggling to keep it together this morning, and I'm almost 50 years old, so I can't imagine the loss you experienced while you were so young, 10. You had to sort out a lot without their help, and without the help of grandparents. You quite literally were alone. When you mention lashing out because of this pain, you're right that lashing out doesn't help. Just lashing out for the sake of lashing out does not. Now, it can still at times be necessary depending on what continues to happen and what continues and continues and continues to happen. It may be necessary, but not sufficient. In other words, people may not be able to help. But a calculated retaliation can work wonders, though. Fighting feminists is a necessity because they will lie about us every time they can. But we should not just lash out. We should calculate these retaliations. Not every one of us is going to do this, but some of us must so that others won't have to. Our own personal belief systems can and should shape how we fight back and defend ourselves as Islam shapes mine. Allah's justice is why I refuse to start smoke, let alone a full-blown fire, with any woman who hasn't started it herself. But now, simps are a different story because they are starting it. FD Signifier says, do I simp for black women? Yes, I like them and I don't like you niggas. FD Signifier is one that starts the smoke, and therefore I bring the fire. FD Signifier knows what he's doing. He's not the only one. But yeah, my personal belief system shapes how aggressive I will not be, but it also shapes how many others fight back or even why they fight back, why we fight back. So look, in the end, telling black women that they're the most enrolled and not the most educated is helpful to us if it's actually a true statistic because it dispels a misconception. Dispelling misconceptions is a necessity, and our population is riddled with one misconception after another. I mean, when you think about it, you and I represent two ends of the same spectrum, literally the same chromatic spectrum of our race. And how many misconceptions exist about both ends? How many misconceptions has our population gotten from our own moms and aunts and grandmoms? Let's not put this on the men because we're not allowed to pass on real truths, let alone misconceptions, unless, of course, these misconceptions are already pre-approved and sanctified by the gynocracy. See, you knew that your parents and grandparents did not abandon you, just as my grandparents did not abandon my brother and me. They passed away. We were not abandoned by these folks. You and I have at least that comfort. We have an audience that has dealt with abandonment or outright betrayal, like my man, Senor Congo, who isn't even in the Americas, but back home in Africa, specifically Angola, and was falsely accused by his sister because she could. I got a distant cousin who has been falsely accusing her own dad for years. She won't go to the cops, but she says that her dad pinned her down. And we know that if a man's going to do this to his own, he's going to do it multiple times, not no once unless something happens to where he gets caught and stopped. But she's been sitting up and saying again and again that he did it once. And my other distant cousin, her sister, is sitting up and saying she's my former sister because she's a bastard niche. My dad don't never do nothing like that, and I don't know what's wrong with her. See, we deal with this up close, you and I. And Senor Conga has to deal with something like this. And he even said, look, South African brothers, you need to not go to Cabo Verde. They're too far gone too. He mentioned this. I didn't know this until about an hour and a few minutes ago. He's one of many. And in the diaspora, not just the USA, but the Anglosphere of the Americas, many of my audience have been lied to by their own sisters and moms, aunts and grandmoms, and some have been lied on like Senor Conga. Lied to, though, about what women want, just so that we would become what women don't want, but whom women want to fund their fun with other guys. It's a genetic war of annihilation, sir. That's why we're involved in this. The negative thoughts you fear us ingesting are in fact a relief to many of us. Are they negative? Yes, but they are a relief to many of us because they come substantiated with evidence or proof. See, I wasn't lied to by my own mom or aunt or grandmother. I was lied to by other women and TV. However, these so-called negative thoughts that we have learned since becoming Red Pill aware are in fact a relief in one sense because they frankly exonerate us for that over which we had no control, but for which we were blamed, sometimes even by our own blood relatives. It's hard to tear down the image of your own mom or aunt or grandmom, but there is a relief when you learn that you aren't inadequate because of what you couldn't control, but rather you were innocent because you didn't get to control it. We've gone from negative lies about ourselves and other black men that we didn't know were lies to negative truths about the ladies to whom we're related and who lied on us in the beginning. One is going to hurt a lot less in the long run. Negative ideas are not something we can escape because we can only choose between negative ideas that are lies and negative ideas that are true. As far as the direction that many brothers will take afterwards, well, it's completely individual. They will go in all kinds of directions. We're actually stereotyped for going into tech now, to be honest. I have a different mindset, and I think maybe my son does too when it comes to skill sets. I became a more detail-oriented educator. Better now than I was when I started this YouTube channel. Maybe the red pill awareness does not have much to do with it, but I think it does. See, all the rhetoric we call pro-black that's really pro-whack just had us thinking we failed and our manhood was inadequate. It turns out that all this time we didn't fail. We were set up. We were in a war we didn't even know was a race war back home in Africa. And now we're seeing hardships in the diaspora that we inherited. And even back home on the continent, we're seeing hardships that we inherited, not failures for which we're responsible. I also was one who thought we failed. It was a red pill added to the sincere pro-black talk and understanding of Islam that freed me from guilt for things we didn't do. You believe that Jesus paid a ransom for us that we owe due to sins we committed. Now, we Muslims don't believe that, but you and I can both ask in agreement a particular question, which is why would there be a ransom at all for sins that we didn't commit? It takes T. Hassan Johnson to tell us the negative things we're not and to rehumanize us dehumanized onyxes. And we're still in the discovery stage of this, so we will be talking. Which leads me to why we talk so much about women. And it's because we're still in the discovery and replacement stage, but also because women are naturally important to men and men are naturally important to women, but we men never lied about their importance. While they lied extensively about our importance in the West just because they can and because they hate us enough to convince us that we're of actual negative importance, if anything, because they want to take all and give nothing. We talk about women because the news that the women of your race and sometimes your individual bloodline in a world in which both matter is undermining you by lying, and worse, is pretty worthy of discussion. Add to that, these same women demand from us race loyalty as well as blood tie loyalty as well, kinship loyalty. Yeah, we're going to have to discuss this. How else are we going to tell other men what the deal is? It's that bad, and we have to describe it for these other men to be aware that are not aware. We tried waking you up, sir. They're demanding from us and even raising a younger generation of themselves to so much as expect and demand that we do all for them and get nothing in return, except another chance to do all for them again. They are demanding that we never ask what is in it for us, but that we do what they command. They demand we build and sacrifice so they'll have a comfortable place to smash the few guys they don't require to build and sacrifice and bring the offspring to us to raise. You're right that most of us won't ride off into the sunset, but that's because most of us cannot migrate at one time. And that's not even feasible. But you can't ride off into the sunset in Baltimore either unless you ride off into it on your own and by yourself. Try to ride off to any sunset with an attractive sister, and you will see soon, you will see why you even could. As in my case, when I could, is because she already had a child, and I didn't. And I was one of those that got off lucky. And that's what it's like for many of us. What it is that these sisters are saying is actually the opposite. They're saying that they just can't find brothers that are on their level. Meanwhile, we got to work so hard to get to our levels, and we are not allowed to match up with sisters that are near our levels. And this is something that is in the culture. Say one thing, do the opposite. Now, try riding off into the sunset in Japan, and it's an even playing field, and that's Japan. Try it in China, and it might be even, and I don't even recommend it. Try it in Laos or Cambodia, and it's even better. It's true that many of us grew up hearing that we aren't good enough. That's right, CJ. But now we're refusing to carry that tradition forward of telling each other this, and we're refusing to sustain this near culture anymore. And we are isolating those voices that talk like this and finding that they're usually sisters and the men of whom they approve as entertainment. When we red pill aware black men listen to each other, we then stop hearing this from each other. That, sir, is why we say what we say. This is the response to the heart that you sought. She really is the problem, sir. And she refuses to stop being the problem. She will always demand what she will not give back, and that is not acceptable. Not when we do it, which they will always say, therefore not when they do it, which they will never say. You will never learn how bad of a deal you are being offered until you forsake the Western sister and her Miss Ann. I hope this benefits. Thank you all for listening. As always, Black Heart, Black Mind, Black Out, Assalamu Alaikum, Black Heterosexual, Non-Select Male Power because they don't like it. Black Patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying again with us here on Jet Black Airways, where Jet Black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. As always, gender, justice,